And welcome back. Round 4 of our Sapphire Open. We have Jacob and Virginia in the booth with you today. And we've got Andrew Woodyard and Lewis Ophel. Andrew's on Infect, Lewis is on Jund. Now, Andrew from our Diamond Open was one of our top 8ers, so he'll be looking to have a repeat performance in this Open.
Yeah, and Lewis didn't finish too badly either.
Yeah, just missed out.
Yeah, he was sweating the breakers and didn't quite get in. So we see Andrew here with a normal Infect start of a Noble Hierarch in play. And Lewis is going to start with Verdant Catacombs and Mishra's Bauble.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Lewis is on an interesting build of Jund. Actually, I think that's incorrect. I believe Lewis is on Abzan, not Jund. So, Lewis is playing an Abzan build, so standard Inquisition of Kozilek, Thoughtseize for the early turns, Path to Exile, Abrupt Decay, a lot of removal. Then you've got threats like Lingering Souls, Tarmogoyf, Grimflayer, Scavenging Ooze, and a copy of Anafenza the Foremost. And we've also got Liliana of the Veil there, which is a 4 of in Lewis's deck.
So, gut feeling, who do you think is favourite in this matchup?
Lewis,
yeah.
He just has so much removal.
Yeah.
And also his creatures are beefy. He can finish the game quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So we see here Thoughtseize taking a mutagenic growth, leaving Andrew with just a lone Inkmoth Nexus in hand. So I think it looks like Andrew mulliganed quite aggressively at the beginning of this game. Yep, so see Lewis has a Liliana in his hand. He also has a Grimflayer, Path to Exile, a Thoughtseize, which is cast, and a Bauble, which is cast. And Andrew, mulligan to 4. But he has found a Glisten Elf here, which is what he wants to see. So he's drawn the decks in the right order so far.
Yep.
He wants to see Infect creatures, and then he wants to see Pump spells. So Mishra's Bauble, not a card we see too often.
Yeah.
I remember that one of the first times it was seen in Modern, really, was when Patrick Chapin tried to make Gurmag Angler Delve a thing for the Modern Pro Tour, and didn't fare too well, unfortunately, for good old Patrick Chapin. But it has since been put into the modern day Abzan and some Jund decks, but less often than Jund decks.
So why has it made into Abzan? Like what?
One card.
Yeah.
Grimflayer.
Oh, radio. Get the delirium happening?
Yeah. So it is really quite free for these decks to play.
Yeah.
And it is just another way of getting that bit closer to delirium. It grows your Tarmogoyfs.
Yeah.
I think obviously the incentive was already there with Tarmogoyf, but if you have a 3/4 Tarmogoyf in play, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's not great, but it's fine. Whereas if you have a 2/2 Grimflayer in play with only 3 card types in your graveyard, that's not so good. So really being able to just ensure that you get to delirium that much more often is really beneficial.
So what is Lewis's game plan? Is it just kind of strip Andrew's hand?
Yeah. It's to make sure there's nothing in hand that can kill him off the bat.
Yeah.
And also make sure that he can try and keep the board clear of Infect creatures.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got a collective brutality here, which is going to be quite brutal. He's going to kill the Glisten Elf, and he's going to be able to take a look at Andrew's hand, which is a breeding pool.
That's a relatively new card as well in these junk decks, isn't it?
It is, and we've seen it been played in Lewis's deck, and also Jim Wilkes was playing it.
Yeah.
In the early rounds. It's it's a good utility card. It's often not seen as more of a 1-of or a 2-of, but it's still quite strong. So I think Lewis has got an Abrupt Decay, a Tarmogoyf, and a Liliana in hand. And it looks like he's drawn a Thoughtseize. No, Inquisition of Kozilek. So he's going to play that Inquisition, and that is going to take a new card to Modern, legal just this weekend. And it is a Blossoming Defense, I believe, which gives target creature +1/+3 and hexproof. Which, although it isn't as powerful as some of the pump spells in this deck, it gives hexproof and pumps the power, whereas a Vines of Vastwood needs 2 open mana to pump the power as well as give hexproof. And yeah, so we see Andrew also playing cycling a Twisted Image, which is a very interesting card in the Infect deck. It might not seem like it does much, but it really is a very important card in the Infect deck, especially if your opponent is playing a little card called Spellskite.
So what does Twisted Image do?
Well, we see Lewis packing things up. Unfortunately for him, he wasn't able to draw enough removal spells or lands really to cast his removal spells to get the job done there. I think he had Abrupt Decay in hand, but wasn't able to tap his lands for green and black at the same time. So that's unfortunate for him. But Twisted Image is an instant for 1 blue, and it reads: switch target creature's power and toughness until end of turn, and you draw a card. So that does is it kills a Spellskite dead. It changes the Spellskite's power to 4 and its toughness to 0, at which point the Spellskite no longer has enough strength to hold itself up.
And Spellskite is the bane of the Infect decks.
Definitely. Become Immense is a lot worse when it's your opponent's getting +6/+6 and trample until end of turn. It's definitely a very powerful sideboard card that has been used against Infect for a very long time. And we see here
Andrew's sideboard.
Andrew has another Twisted Image, so he's got 2 main and 1 in the board. So I would imagine, Virginia, that he's probably taking out the Twisted Images with a bit of regularity.
You don't think that Lewis will sideboard into Spellskite?
Well, I don't think Lewis has any Spellskites.
Oh, there you
go. But I think that it's really in there to protect against mainboard Spellskites. There's really no downside necessarily to having it in your deck, given that it cycles. But it is just so good against the opponents who are playing Spellskites.
Out of these cards, what do you reckon Andrew will bring in against Lewis?
So I think that Spell Pierce is going to be probably... potentially not Spell Pierce. So Spell Pierce would be really good against a Jund deck. Because the way they're trying to kill your creatures is Terminate. Whereas against Lewis, the only 2 mana removal spell that Lewis has, aside from Murderous Cut, which is Collective Brutality, which is only a 1/of, is Abrupt Decay. And that's it. Spell Pierce isn't too good at dealing with Abrupt Decay.
Do you reckon you'll bring in Dismembers against potential Goyfs or anything?
Dismembers, potentially. It certainly matches up well against the line of threats that Lewis has. I think that Andrew is really looking to get as low to the ground as possible and just go under everything that Lewis is doing. He's not going to win if the game goes long. Lewis is going to be able to get a Liliana active and just start stripping things out of his hand, and it's going to be really hard for him.
Alright, now it's going to try and bring up Lewis's sideboard.
So you see here that Lewis has 3 Fulminator Mage, Surgical Extraction, Leyline of the Void, Engineered Explosives, which I think is potentially going to be quite good.
Definite shoo-in.
Playing Engineered Explosives for 1 kills all of Andrew's Noble Hierarchs, kills his Glycerin Elves. Playing it for 2 gets the blighted agents and also the spellskite,
Yep.
which I think Andrew will probably be bringing in from the sideboard, given that it is a. He would much prefer that the abrupt decays and the like target the spellskite instead of his infect creatures.
Pulses, you reckon? Or decays?
Yeah. I also think that Zealous Persecution is probably something that's going to be really good. There are not many ways that Lewis has of dealing with an Inkmoth Nexus.
Yeah, okay.
Because it is a land and because it has no mana
That
cost.
is true, yeah.
Which means that a lot of the removal he has, aside from Path to Exile, doesn't really deal with it very well. And so Zealous Persecution is a way of potentially clearing the board.
Jumping back into our match.
So Andrew opened with a no-lander and
bummer.
has mulliganed that quite quickly.
Yeah.
It looks like Lewis is keeping. He's got a couple of lands, a Liliana, and a Mishra's Bauble, which is good. He also has, so we have, Lewis has a Mishra's Bauble, a Collective Brutality, 2 fetch lands, a Liliana of the Veil, Lingering Souls, and a Thoughtseize. So he has a really good game plan here.
Yeah.
It's turn 1 Thoughtseize.
Yeah. Strip the hand.
Hopefully draw up a turn 2 play or go with Collective Brutality.
Yeah.
And then he can secure his lead, hopefully, with a Liliana of the Veil or a Lingering Souls.
Yeah.
This is a strong hand from Lewis.
Here we go.
So it's going to lead with Marsh Flats. And
Good
so
old
see,
2-1 Thoughtseize.
Fetch and go Thoughtseize. Yep, so we've got Pendle Haven, a fetch land, Inkmoth Nexus, a Taxian Probe, a Kitchen Finks, and a Spellskite. So he's brought in those Kitchen Finks. Which is interesting.
Yeah. What do you think about that sideboard?
I think that's probably a concession to the fact that Lewis does have some very big creatures and can end the game quite quickly. Should he choose to go that way.
Yeah.
Kitchen Finks is very resilient to the removal that Lewis is presenting. Again, aside from those 4 Paths to Exile. Although, you need to remember, Andrew hasn't seen any Path to Exile out of Lewis. And so, although it's probably expected that Lewis is playing some amount, it's not as given as some of the other cards that Lewis will be playing.
Yeah.
So Lewis there taking a Gataxian Probe, which is interesting. Gataxian Probe normally doesn't necessarily do much.
Yeah. Would you have been tempted to take the Finks there?
I think that Lewis doesn't. He can't care about the Finks.
Yeah.
If he cares about the Finks and devotes too many resources to it, then he's going to be killed with Infect damage.
Yeah.
I think he really wants to keep Andrew's hand clear of pump spells.
Yeah.
And one of the ways of getting the pump spells into his hand is with that Gataxian Probe. And we see here, Lewis again is going for an Inquisition of Kozilek, and that's going to get rid of probably the Might of Old Creusa.
Yeah.
No, he's instead gone for Spellskite.
Spellskite.
Okay. Which is another fair thing. It's going to prevent Lewis from dealing with the Inkmoth Nexus.
There's a Bauble.
So Lewis here hoping to find a 3rd land so that he can play his Liliana. And also a Path to Exile. And here Andrew has drawn in Vines of the Vastwood, which is actually going to be quite good. Because he's going to be able to play his 3rd land this turn. And he'll be able to activate the Inkmoth Nexus. And he'll be able to keep up Vines of Vastwood for the unkicked mode.
Yeah.
Which is going to allow him to start getting in a bit of damage. He probably won't need to use it this turn though, which he'll be perfectly happy with. it'll probably be more important to protect it after he's already cast a Might of Voltorosa, but he'll have to draw another land if he wants to do that.
Do you think Infect, and I guess a bunch of the aggro decks, they've benefited the most from the twin ban?
I think so. In general, how things worked before the twin ban was that you have a bunch of aggressive strategies, and twin was the only able to play the control role because it could also win the game out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Modern, as it stands at the moment, doesn't necessarily have a true control deck, and it hasn't for quite a while. And twin was really able to do that because it just could beat any deck in the format. There were hands that could beat any deck in the format, and there isn't really one of those decks around. You still have Abzan and Jund, but they can still stumble, and there isn't a combination of two cards that just wins them the game on the spot. So twin was able to play the control role by doing that, and it also kept a lot of other unfair decks in check, because if you couldn't beat twin, you had no business playing modern. Really. But it was still beatable. You could still play Spell Sky, for example, and things like that. But yeah, I think that Infect and decks like that really did struggle against decks playing Remans, Monolinks, Lightning Bolts.
Yeah.
It was much harder for them to deal with, and there really is no shell that does that well in the current modern metagame. If you're playing those decks, you quite quickly run up against something like Dredge, which we saw in the last round, or something like Abzan, which strips your hand and just gets you in card advantage.
You don't have the combo kill to get out of those situations.
You don't have the panic button.
The twin eject button.
Yeah, so we see Lewis has a Zealous Persecution in hand apparently, which is not that good against a Kitchen Finks, but it is, and unfortunately for him, it's also not very good against Pendelhaven. Unless Andrew gets a little bit greedy and wants to tap down. If Andrew at any point taps down too many of his lands, then Lewis will be able to fire off that Zealous Persecution and kill the Boss Nexus. But we see here Lewis content to play Liliana and put a -1/-1 counter on that Kitchen Finks. The little-known second -2 ability of Liliana, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, your opponent gains 2 life.
And there's Inkmoth attacking.
Yep. So the Kitchen Finks was at Liliana, I believe, and we see Lewis going to Infect after the Pendelhaven pumps the Inkmoth Nexus. And there's a second Inkmoth Nexus there for Andrew, so that's... Now, this is interesting. Andrew has the option of activating one Inkmoth Nexus and attacking with it, or activating 2. There are arguments for doing both. The arguments for attacking with 2 means that if Lewis has any removal, it is harder for him to kill both of them.
Yep.
And then Andrew can pump the remaining one with the untapped Pendelhaven. The argument for animating 1 is that you get to leave up more combat tricks. And the like. So Lewis really wants him to activate both of them because it's going to force him to activate the Pendelhaven. And Lewis will also be able to cast Zealous Persecution and kill the Kitchen Finks. So Andrew, I think, making the slightly better play of activating
Just doing
1.
the 1. Forces the Zealous Persecution from Lewis's hand. Goodbye, Finks.
Andrew, I think that was a mistake with Andrew using the Pendelhaven to activate the Inkmoth Nexus, because that meant
he couldn't keep up.
He couldn't keep up Pendelhaven to pump the Inkmoth Nexus. That's interesting. So Andrew there opted to leave up blue mana. I'm not entirely sure what's in his hand, but yeah, I'm not sure if he regrets tapping that Panel Haven or not. Yeah, the Zealous Persecution was quite good for Lewis, although he's still not out of the woods yet.
No.
His opponent's got an Inkmoth Nexus in play.
I think he's missed a
And
land drop as
Mightyful
well.
Cursor in hand.
Goif.
It's probably quite a big Goif. It's got Artifact, Land, Instant, Sorcery, Creature. It's
There's the
5.
fingers counting.
Yeah, I think
Thanks,
we're at
Lewis.
5.
Thanks for telling us.
6.
No, 6.
6.
That is...
Planeswalker too. We've got Liliana,
yeah.
of course. So, some Goif
That
is a big boy.
That is a big Goif. That's nice of Lewis to, let the opponent know how big the Goif is.
Interesting here that Lewis is on 13 life after having taken no damage from his opponent.
Yep.
An interesting dynamic of playing against Infect is that there are a lot of decks in the format that their life total is that they take a lot of damage from their lands, right? These 3-color decks, you've got to fetch, and then you've got to shock yourself if you want to make
Thought
plays
Seizers.
on tap. You got Thought Seizers, all sorts of things. Certainly, Death Shadow Zoo can drop its life total quite quickly. The interesting dynamic when you come against Infect, all of a sudden that doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
you can just do whatever you want, take as much damage as you like, and you'll be fine because they're not gonna kill you with normal damage. So see, Lewis is down to on 4 Infect, and Andrew's attacking. And Lewis is just gonna block with one of those spirit tokens that he's made. He doesn't want to risk Andrew, and Andrew's got 3 lands untapped. All it would take is something like a Become Immense, or there are any number of combination of pump spells that Andrew could have that would make Lewis dead on the spot. So blocking is definitely correct.
It's the worst thing you want to do against Infect, right? Either tap out or not block something.
Yeah.
And there's Big Goif and the old Dried Arbor Chumpin.
Yep. There's a nice trick there from Andrew is fetch Dryad Arbor. It's another nice combination that the Infect deck has access to. Not often used in this way. Often you fetch for it in response to Liliana -2. This allows you to sacrifice the Dryad Arbor instead of your precious Infect creature.
And of course, these are the mythic tokens by our local Canberra artist, Joshua Ophel, who's actually Lewis's brother.
Yes.
Big brother. And they're exclusive to Paragon Games. And those are the spirit ones.
Yeah. So I'm sure Lewis has asked his brother very nicely. This is some of the tokens. They're quite nice.
So what's Andrew going to do about this big Goif?
Well, I think Andrew's really hoping to get into a situation. What he's hoping is that Lewis swings with his team. Yeah. Which is not going to happen. No. But he needs a way to get a creature in unblocked. So he wants something like a Blighted Agent that would allow him to play the Blighted Agent, block with the Inkmoth Nexus, or chump with the Inkmoth Nexus, and then be able to attack unblockable.
Yeah, because right now that formidable wall of spirits is holding that Inkmoth Nexus at bay.
So, interesting play there. Andrew activated the Inkmoth Nexus, thought for a second, and then passed the turn.
Yeah.
So...
what's going on there?
I think he's trying to bait a removal spell, I think is what he's doing. He's making sure that if Lewis has a removal spell, he wants him to use it now. Yeah. But yes, he's forced into blocking here because there's still 6 creature types in the graveyard. And he's going to have to use a Become Immense, which is actually going to kill the Tarmogoyf. So it's going to buy himself a bit more time. Yeah. He's not too happy doing it this way. He would much prefer using it to kill Lewis and get him to 10 Infect. But he's going to use it here defensively to get rid of the Tarmogoyf, and that's going to buy him another 3 turns because Lewis can't attack with more than 2 Spirit tokens. Otherwise the Inkmoth Nexus will come in and he has to fear a bunch of pump spells from Andrew. So this is a good play from Andrew. Obviously he's not in an ideal situation. This isn't what he wants to be doing, but this is the best way of getting out of the situation he's found himself in.
Yeah, and of course the Goyf now shrinks because I think there's no more creatures in the graveyard.
No, that's another nice interaction with the Becomaments, being able to remove another creature type. So that's worked well for Andrew. And we see Lewis still unable to find one of his 4 paths to exile.
All land.
Love to draw a path to exile.
Yeah, it's Anafenza, I believe.
Yeah, Anafenza the Foremost, which is a 3 mana 4/4. And whenever a creature would go to the graveyard, exile it, I believe. It's also got Vigilance. Can't remember exactly. There's a lot of text on that card.
There is.
So this is Anafenza before she died and became a ghost.
Yeah. So whenever she attacks, you put a 1/1 counter on another target tapped creature you control. And as Jacob mentioned, if a creature card we put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it. She's a 4/4.
So see, Andrew's hand at the moment is quite stacked. He's got Mutagenic Growth, Blossoming Defense, Pendelhaven, and Vines of Vastwood. So he does have a lot of ways. You say he's playing the Vines of the Vastwood here. He has a lot of ways of getting through damage. But here he's been forced to tap down.
Yeah.
And that is going to take care of those cards. Unfortunately for him, he didn't have another green mana up. If he did, he would have been able to play Blossoming Defense.
Yeah. And that's what Lewis wants, isn't it? He wants the creature and the pump spell.
Yeah, he really...
The old 2-for-1. Yeah.
The whole time, I think Lewis has been trying to get it.
Yeah.
So that Andrew is tapped out with a creature on the battlefield.
Yeah.
And he's been playing it really well, and he let the Tarmogoyf die. I think he already had the Murderous Cutting Hand.
Yeah.
But he realised that playing it then opened himself up to more tricks from Andrew. I would just like to point out and say thank you to all 12 of our viewers today. We're very happy to have you watching the Sapphire Open for the Paragon Games tournament series here. We're at Jolt Games today in Canberra. We're having a great time as we see Lewis take game 2 and take this match to a 3rd game.
Yeah. So Abzan takes down that one.
Yep. Yeah, so you saw Andrew there. He tried to get some threats out. Lewis was able to deal with the first few with his Zealous Persecution. Dealt with the Kitchen Finks, even though he had to trade a little bit unfavorably with the Kitchen Finks through just throwing a Liliana at it and only taking care of half.
Yeah.
It was able to put him in a good enough position that once he started playing some big Tarmogoyfs and getting enough Lingering Souls tokens out, and he was able to maneuver around Andrew's pump spells into a position where he was able to take that game.
Now these decks, do their sideboard depend? Are they dependent on playing or drawing? Do you think?
I'm not sure. I haven't played a lot of Infect, but I anticipate that Infect potentially could change. Lewis, I don't think would change much based on the play or the draw, except his mix of Thought Seizers and Inquisitions of Kozilek. Sometimes we see a mix of 3 of each in the main board and 1 of each in the sideboard. Although Lewis doesn't have that exact mix, his sideboard is much more full with a lot of other cards. But that's the main difference. There's not a lot of tweaks that are made depending on that in this matchup.
It's a good start from Andrew. The elf, Glistener
Yep.
elf.
Alright, so Lewis has, I think he has Grimflayer, 2 Lingering Souls, 2 fetch lands. He's got a Path to Exile and a Murderous Cut and a Mishra's Bauble.
He must be happy
Noble
with that
Hierarch,
hand.
I think. But yeah, he's very happy with having both Murderous Cut and Path to Exile and the lands to cast.
Yeah.
That's all he really wants
Yeah.
in the early game. And he's got Mishra's Bauble, so that's easily going to get instant sorcery land in his graveyard. He just needs a sorcery or something, and then his Grimflayer is going to be turned on. So Andrew has a Breeding Pool, 2 Might of Old Crowsar, a Vines of Vastwood, and an Apostle's Blessing in hand. Apostle's Blessing, one of the other ways that Andrew can interact and try and play around Lewis's removal.
Gives hexproof from memory.
Protection from a
Protection,
colour
yeah.
or artifact.
Yep.
So, yes, it is a 1 mana and 1 Phyrexian white mana. So, 1 mana and 2 life in Andrew's deck. And target creature gains protection from artifacts or your choice of a colour until end of turn. It has the added benefit in some matchups of allowing the creatures to be unblockable.
Ah, yeah.
Because you can give it
Against
protection from
Affinity.
Yes,
Yep.
so Affinity certainly only plays artifact creatures,
Yep.
and you can give it protection from those. Also, if Lewis, say, had a board of Tarmogoyf, Grimflayer, Noble Hierarch, you could give it protection from green. Oh,
Oh, that was a bit of a
that
blowout there.
was not good for Andrew.
Yeah.
I think he overextended a little bit.
Yeah.
That playing 2 Might of Old Crowsars into Lewis's Path to Exile. I think it might have been better for Andrew to keep up the Apostle's Blessing potentially. Although as I said, I'm not an expert Infect player, and we haven't seen Path to Exile out of Lewis yet. It's not a given that these Abzan decks play a 4 of it.
Yeah.
And we just haven't seen any. Certainly Andrew, having seen the way the last few games play out, he's thinking that most of Lewis's removal is 2 mana or requires a stacked graveyard with Murderous Cut. So unfortunately, it's not going to work out very well for Andrew there. So he's going to have to find another Infect creature, and quite fast as well.
It's the old Grimflayer.
Yep.
I'm excited that this card made modern.
Yeah.
Didn't really make standard.
No, it hasn't done much in standard yet. It did a little bit in some builds of the Emrakul decks of the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think that Emrakul decks are going to take a little bit of a backseat in the new standard format.
Yeah.
Kaladesh seems quite aggressive, and there's some tools for some interesting decks there. It could still see play, but Grimflayer, a really useful tool for this Abzan deck and the Jund deck we saw Jimel was playing earlier on today. Lets you filter your draws, lets you stack your graveyard, make your Tarmogoyfs bigger, and is just sometimes a 4/4 for 2.
Yep. And I see the new Emrakul making a splash here this weekend as well.
Yeah? Yep. Another useful ability on Grimflayer for Lewis is sometimes it draws him half of the Lingering Souls, which is always good.
Yeah.
So I see Lewis putting Thoughtseize, Tarmogoyf, and Shambling Bent into the graveyard there. I think he's got a 4th land in hand and isn't really that interested.
There's another path.
There is. But here we have Andrew with enough mana to
Vines.
cast the Vines Password.
Yeah.
Virginia, I'm disappointed in Lewis.
Why is that?
Because the art on his Path to Exiles don't match. It's quite disappointing. I thought better of him. I see earlier in the game he played a Modern Masters one, the Dissolving Leonin, which is quite beautiful art. And now
I
he's
personally
got
like the new art.
this one.
Yeah.
So this is the F&M promo art.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really mind which art you choose as long as
Keep
you
it
stick to
consistent.
one.
Be sure to give that feedback to him after this match.
I will. I would have lent him one if it needed to fix the art.
Stop the match. We have a
So
bunch of
here, this
stuff.
is quite a large stack,
Yeah.
and I think what's going to end up happening is Lewis's Path to Exile and Murderous Cut are going to be countered due to the Apostle's Blessing and Vines of Vastwood, and then the Mutagenic Growth is going to give the Infect Nexus +2/+2, and Lewis is going to take 3 points of Infect damage. So I think, although some players might look at that and think Andrew would be disappointed in using the Vines of the Vastwood in that way and having to waste them and not pump his creatures, I think he played that really well, and I think he'll be very pleased to have traded them for removal spells.
Yeah.
Because Andrew has a lot more pump spells than Lewis has removal spells.
And he still has the Inkmoth just lying there in the graveyard as well, so
See a Liliana come down for Lewis.
and there's the last pump.
Yep. And he'll be quite happy to get that Vines of the Vastwood, the third one, out of Andrew's hand.
Oh.
Doesn't matter though.
Oh, boy.
Andrew has drawn
Yeah.
Become
It's
Immense.
from the top.
Yep. And that Inkmoth Nexus
Oh,
is
wow.
going to become absolutely enormous. And that's going to do a lot of infect damage to Lewis, and he's going to succumb to the might of Phyrexia.
Yeah. Well, that's one way to end a Infect game.
Yeah, it's how a large number of them end, is with it become immense.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that was very well navigated by Andrew.
Yeah.
Just making sure to empty Lewis's hands of removal spells, making sure that he was keeping his Infect creatures around as much as possible. So it's going to advance him to 3-1.
Yeah.
And he's going to stand a good chance of making the top 8 here at our Sapphire Open.
I think he can ID in from memory from the standings. That's his
he'll-
second top 8 in a row.
Yep. He's been playing well. And Lewis, unfortunately, dropping to 2-2, and again in the position where he could win his next match and sweat the tiebreakers.
Yeah, he's actually probably in the same position he was in last Open.
Yeah.
And that is round 4. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back shortly for round 5. See you guys later.